So one of the busiest spots at the PAX East show floor right now is the Transistor booth, which Supergiant Games just announced this week, I believe. The sort of, is it a spiritual successor, or is it just something totally fresh?
Yeah, that's a great question. I almost feel like that's not for us to decide. We see it as something new, but it's the whole team that created Bastion now making a new game. So I suppose in that respect it can be seen as a spiritual successor, just because it's everyone, you know, back together again, making something new, and a lot of our values about game development and, you know, the kind of games that we really love. You know, Bastion was one expression of that, and we intend for this game to also be an expression of that. So, so yes, some of the spirit is intact, I hope.
Yeah, I feel it. The tone and the narrative sort of feels a little bit familiar, but then again, the gameplay is completely different, in my opinion.
Yeah, we wanted to create a whole new world for this game, a whole new feeling, and you know, do different things. We see it as being in the same genre. We also consider it an action RPG, and I think in Bastion, hopefully we kind of surprised people at what we were able to do within sort of the structure of an action RPG. And once again, we want to do that here by kind of combining this more kind of strategic combat system in with the fast pace that you would expect from the genre, and then, you know, once again kind of go to some very interesting places with the narrative that hopefully you get a sense of it from what you played here. But you know, the kind of synthesis of gameplay and storytelling is still very important to us, and we want to keep exploring that with this game.
I feel that, and with playing this game and also with Bastion, is that you just really keep the player in a tight grip with the story. You really don't let them go and sort of relax at any point. It's always there.
We do want the kind of story and the atmosphere to always be there. We want to give context to what you're doing and make it feel like you're doing something meaningful within this world, and that's why the story exists. It's to help give meaning to your actions. You know, hopefully your actions feel meaningful and interesting by themselves. So, like, even if you play with the audio off, it's still an enjoyable game. But there's this other layer that's going on that is important to us, and I think can help just make for like a richer and more memorable game. You know, but I think that's also really important to us, just as it was in Bastion, is the sense that this is, you know, to some extent this is your story. It's not just like, we're not just shoveling our story onto you. Like, this world is going to respond to decisions that you make and things that you do, and hopefully strike a good balance between feeling like an interesting kind of tightly woven story, but also one that's very personal as well.
So the last time around, basically, you were exploring why the world had sort of ended. This time around, it's more like, seems like more of a personal thing. You're being targeted for an assassination, and that's where the game kicks off. Yeah,
that's right. You play as this character who you know, you learn she's survived an attempt on her life, and she gets away with the weapon that was used to try to kill her, and it's a very unusual weapon, and it's there's you know, she understands that there's something very important about it, and the people who lost it really want it back. For some reason, but if they get it back, it's probably going to cost her her life. She doesn't want that to happen, so she's kind of going across the city trying to figure out how she's going to get out of this situation that she's now in. And, you know, during the story, you'll kind of find out what a lot of these mysteries are. You know, why these people wanted to do this, what their agenda is, and who they are, and so on and so forth, and learn much more about the setting as well. We like to, you know, again, sort of the combination of world building and like character driven stuff. We really enjoy that. We like games where the characters feel, where you really get to know the characters, basically, rather than have like 1,000 throwaway characters. We'd rather have fewer characters that are very interesting. So those are our kind of goals around the high level goals around the narrative. And, you know, again, we hope to explore some themes that feel that really kind of resonate with people. That was very important to us with the Bastion narrative. That even though it's a fantasy game, you can relate to it. And likewise here, even though this is a science fiction game, we want it to be relatable on some level, in spite of how strange everything is, admittedly, at the beginning and so forth.
I think it's nice because it is a science fiction game, and the last one was a fantasy game, but you still sort of retain some aspects of that art style that's unique to you.
Yeah, it's Jen Z, our art director. Everyone on the team is a huge fan of her work, and this time around, it's like I was just saying earlier. It was really exciting for me personally because we have some of our like Bastion characters here in our booth as well. It was the first time I've personally actually seen these characters side by side, and there's clear differences in the art style. This game has a somewhat of a more, it's less kind of cartoony, I guess. But you could tell it's the same artist, and hopefully, to your questions earlier, hopefully you could tell that this is the work of the same team and so forth, and so people who. But at the same time have it feel pretty different and fresh. That's the balance we're trying to strike. So.
And another area where we got a lot of positive feedback from the last game, of course, is the music and the ambience and all of that. And I just feel like you really hit a note with what you did in this demo here. Yeah,
thanks very much. I mean, the music was always really important to us on Bastion. It's another thing I was talking about with the team is like. When Bastion was coming out, we couldn't tell people like the music's going to be really good. It's like that seems like an almost silly thing to promise because it's just. But I feel like after Bastion came out, it was really wonderful for us as a team to see the reaction to the soundtrack because it was so important to us during development. This time around, I think we could say a little bit more openly that the music, is once again an important part of this game. It really supports our overall goals of like creating an atmosphere and a mood and stuff like that, and it's fairly evident even in the character design of like you play as a character who's a former singer, and her music is an important part of this world, and that's something that Darren Korb, our audio director and composer, he's spent a lot of time trying to figure out a new sort of musical style that's going to really fit this world. So it's been really amazing to put that out there finally and see a great response because it's not something. It takes us a while to pull this stuff together into something that we're like feel remotely ready to kind of show people, and then getting the response from people that they enjoy it is just incredibly satisfying and humbling, and not something that we take for granted really.
So if we move on to like the specifics, the boring stuff, platforms and release dates and such things, what are you communicating at this point?
Yeah, so the release date we're aiming for early 2014, so early next year sometime. Platforms we do not know at this point. So we will figure that out as we get closer. It's an interesting time for games, new consoles coming out, and so we don't know what's going to happen with all that stuff any better than anyone else. So we'll see what happens there. But
is it a good thing to put your game out there before you actually nail those things down to see? Because now you're in a different position. Everyone's loving this right now. There's a lot of positive feedback, so you're in a little bit of a different position. And of course, you have Bastion to bank on as well.
Well, I think to us it's a benefit to to get good feedback on the game and show it. Yeah, I mean, I think Bastion, it started off as an Xbox Live Arcade game. It came to Steam 3 weeks later. It eventually came to Mac and Linux, and we have a browser-based version in Chrome, and then iPad and iPhone and stuff like that. And we made those versions one by one. We're a small team, so we focus on one thing at a time. Although we can't promise anything, we can't promise anything, period, when it comes to platforms. But we, as a studio, it's been very important to us to develop the discipline around making games for different platforms. But the quality of the game is the most important thing to us, so we would much rather make, one really good game than a mediocre game for 10 platforms or whatever. So we're just gonna. It's an approach that's worked well for us on Bastion. We first showed that game before we had any platform decisions also, so we kind of decided to try that again in spite of what you're saying. So we'll keep our fingers crossed that people give us the benefit of the doubt when it comes to that stuff.
Right. Thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.